Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sales Day of Prep for Wave Week. I am super excited for the conversation I'm about to have with my special guest, Nikki Rausch. She is the sales maven. She is a podcaster. She is an author. She is just an amazing and genuine person to really help you fight any fears that you might have of the sales process and asking for sales in your travel business. So without further ado, welcome Nikki to Prep for Wave Week.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. That was such a nice intro you had for me. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yay. So how did you get into sales and how did the sales maven come about?
Well, I actually got my first corporate sales job from a college project way back in the
No
90s.
way.
And so I was in technology sales for many, many years. But really, even before that, while I was going to college, I got like a side job to
Mhm.
just try to help support myself get through college. And it was the first time that this particular job, it was a minimum wage job, by the way. And this was back when minimum wage was much less than it is
Oh yeah.
today, but they had a commission component to it. And so whenever you would work, if you would sell above a certain dollar amount based on how many hours you were working,
Mhm.
they would pay you commission. And so oftentimes I was doubling and tripling my wage by having this commission component. And so to get a corporate sales job out of college felt like I had hit the jackpot because to be able to control your income, the harder you work, oftentimes the more you would sell and, to make more money. And so, yeah. And then Sales Maven was born out of kind of getting burnt out of doing what I was doing. I'd been in it for 17 years, and I just felt like there needs to be something more fulfilling in my life. And I kind of fell into starting my own business back in 2013. So I'm just about to celebrate my
Oh,
10-year
yay.
anniversary in business. And I fell into it because I started hanging around entrepreneurs, and I love small business owners. I love entrepreneurs because they're so passionate about what they do and about being of
Mhm.
service. And as I was getting to know some of them, I realized that they were really struggling to make money in their business. And
Mhm.
when you don't make money in your business, it's like you have a very expensive hobby.
Yes.
And so I just started, offering some assistance to people who were interested, kind of just while I was figuring out what I was going to do when I grew up. I say that because I was 40 and looking at 50, like out my windshield here going like, I need to be doing something more fulfilling. And my business was really born out of helping some of these entrepreneurs and then pulling me aside, one in particular saying like, you need to be teaching these skills to people. Like people will, and I was like, I don't think people will pay money to learn like what I know because it seems really basic. And she's like, no, people will pay you money. And
Yes.
so I started Sales Maven back in 2013, and I've had the ride of my life. It has been the most fulfilling work I've ever done. And I get to still hang around with small business owners and entrepreneurs and teach them really simple, easy to implement steps that make them more money. And that feels really satisfying.
I love that so much. There were two things that I wrote down: commission based, because that
Hmm.
is huge in the travel industry.
Yeah.
And then two, people that have a very expensive hobby that are
Yeah.
wanting to make money in their businesses, because I think that resonates a lot with the travel advisor community. And I know a lot of people are trying to kind of monetize in different ways now their travel businesses.
Yeah.
But when you were in that commission level position, like what motivated you other than like, yay, making money? Or like, how did you get to the point where you were doubling and tripling sales? What was kind of like the behind the scenes of that?
Well, okay, so I will say if you're looking at somebody whose main job is sales,
Hmm.
I always say they're motivated by one of two things. And it could be a combination of both of the things, but they have to have one of these two motivators, I think, in order to be really successful. So the first one is money. That's
Hmm.
obvious.
Right.
But the second one is recognition. And what I mean by that is by seeing the ability of, like, from a tracking standpoint and from the ability to see kind of results and where you are in relation to everybody else. So having managed a pretty large sales team for part of my career, and also having worked with a lot of different sales reps where I was, at the manufacturer level and they were at the dealer or distributor level.
Okay.
One of the things that I learned is that you have to put the numbers in front of them all the time.
I
So
love
if you're
that.
trying to drive people to be competitive, you want to regularly, they need to know where they're tracking and where they're tracking in relation to others. So
Mm-hmm.
when you see that, it's not always about being number one, because sometimes it's like, it doesn't matter how hard you work, or based on the territory you have or the opportunities that you have right now, like maybe number one isn't realistic. But when you can put in front of somebody like the numbers and where they're tracking,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't always about getting like your, number 10 to be number one. It's about wanting number 10 to beat number 9, and number 9 to try to beat number 8, and number 8 to be trying to beat number 7. It's like just those incremental things. So for me, I know that I even do this actually in my group coaching program. We do something once a year that's this big recognition of the members in my group coaching program. And based on my background of building sales contests and promotional stuff, I last year put a plan in place where we drove them to have the behaviors we wanted and we gave them points. And I put out a spreadsheet every couple days so they could see how many points they had, but where they were tracking in total points compared to everybody else in the group. And what it did is it just it like drove the whole thing up, because people were like, well, I want to get ahead. So I need to do
Right.
things that are going to make a difference in my business. So for me, it's about recognition as well.
Oh, I love that. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting some ideas here.
Okay, good.
And I think, like, especially, I mean, all solopreneur or most solopreneurs, it's a very lonely road
Yeah.
and trying to stay motivated. And I feel like that is such an amazing, like, target to be able to see, okay, like, what else is somebody doing, but also holding you accountable. Like, I made this goal at the end of the year and I'm either getting there or I'm not, or I've
Yeah.
surpassed it. And what can you do every quarter to kind of adjust?
Yeah, and if you truly are a solopreneur, there's things that you can do. So one thing, I actually do this with my clients all the time. I do it for myself too. And as a matter of fact, I did it this morning because I just, right before you and I got on this,
Mm-hmm.
I did a training. And from the training, it was a free training, and then there was an opportunity for people to sign up for a brand new program that I launched. So
Yeah.
I always set what I call a good, better, best goal for myself. So I know, like, what's the good? Good is like, it's usually proof of concept for me. Like, okay, so if I get this many buyers, that's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then better is like, what feels like a little bit of a stretch. Okay, awesome. And then the best for me is like knock it out of the park, home run. And so I track that for myself, because again, this is the salesperson in me, this
Yeah.
like motivated by recognition, where I can go, did I hit my good? Did I hit my better? Because once I hit the good, now the push is just to get to the better. And then once I get to the better, then I push to get to the best. So it isn't always trying to, again, not trying to go like, oh, well, I'm either sink or swim, or, success or fail if I don't hit my best. No,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just about like getting that incremental growth in your business and in your results. So you can go, okay, I'm tracking in the right direction. I remember, again, from managing sales teams, like we used to do things where we would give them like the little like temperature thing, and they could color in as they
Yeah.
hit the, but like even those little things to keep yourself motivated, like whatever yours are. Like mine is never really about, like, a lot of times for me, it's not that I want to color in and like hit the top. I like
Okay.
to like count down sometimes. So sometimes for me, it's a countdown of like, okay, I achieved this result. So that means, I only have this much more to go, or I've achieved this. So I only have this much more to go. So you can go either way, whether you're counting it down or counting it up, as long as you're doing something to keep yourself motivated.
Yes, I love that you mentioned like the temperature gauge because I used to be in direct sales. I've done so many like back in the day. And I
Yeah.
remember there was one of the husbands of like the team stuff would like create these different gauges. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I just need like 5 more for this or it was just
Yes.
fun. It gamified the process of
Yeah.
sales.
I love a game too. I like to be
Yes.
entertained. So
Hmm.
often I do things to entertain myself and my business, but there has to be that component to it that is about scaling. It's about reaching, the goals that you set for yourself. But it isn't all or nothing thinking. And I think that's the thing that can kind of get people feeling like
Agreed.
disappointed. It's like, well, I didn't hit this huge goal that I set for myself. Well, but did you, but like, what were the incremental changes? What were the things that you did well? What were the things that you can celebrate as your successes versus
Hmm.
like it's a, you know, it's a fail or succeed or, I don't like the like in my background that's known as digital thinking. So I don't want the digital thinking. I want the analog thinking. I want the increments. I want to be able to show progress.
Yes, and I think that is so important because, like, even myself, yesterday I was like, "Oh my gosh, I got nothing done," because I was on a lot of different calls. But I'm like, "But you did get things done. Like, there was things that moved other items forward in your business. So it may not
Yeah.
seem like it, but you have to be like, oh my gosh, like I landed this, I did this, I
Hmm.
moved this forward, I was brave enough to finally do this thing."
I learned something, right? Like any
Mhm.
of that stuff, you've got to count it, I think, to keep yourself, especially those people who are solopreneurs, to keep yourself motivated. Or if you're the head of your, business and you've got people under you, like, yeah, you've got to motivate your team, but you have to motivate yourself too, I think.
Mhm.
And when
Mhm.
sales is a driving force in the business, which frankly should be in every business, a
Right.
driving force, like you have to track the things that move the needle, and
Mhm.
sales move the needle. So you should be
Exactly.
tracking it.
Yeah. When we're thinking about those business owners who have this expensive hobby, I feel like there's big mindset stuff that has to kind of be sorted through. Do you agree, disagree, just from your expertise on that?
Well, I think mindset is always a really key critical thing. I think sometimes people can get too caught up in like um you know sometimes I think we make a bigger deal out of it maybe than, and I don't mean to take away from anything, but at the same
Right.
time, I think sometimes you just got to put your head down and you got to work and
Right.
you got to get things done even if you're like my mindset is that I'd rather be outside in the sun right now. Okay, but you've got commitments and you have some
Right.
goals and you have to keep like moving towards the like what's the ultimate outcome. And as long as
Mhm.
you're moving in that direction, awesome. So, but I, with that in mind, from I have a pretty extensive background in neurolinguistic programming. We haven't really talked about that. And if that is like somebody's like, what did she just say? It's really the study of communication. So it sounds super scientific, but it's really about communication skills. And with my background in NLP, one of the things that we learn is that it's really important to think about your state management, like the management of your internal state. So you could also refer to this as mindset.
Mm.
And there are things that you can do before you go into a sales call and frankly should do before you go into a sales call to get your mindset, your state of mind in kind of that right frame of mind so that you can increase your chances of success. And it's been proven there's studies that show that people that have some kind of a ritual or some kind of process that they do to get themselves in that right state of mind, they have more success in the call. Now, it doesn't mean that this isn't about fake it till you make it. That's not what
Right.
I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is having something that allows for you to go, okay, pay attention. This is the goal. This is where we're going. So that is going to be my sole focus and the person that I'm in conversation with. And all the other stuff that's vying for my attention. What am I going to make for dinner tonight? Did I pay this bill? What am I going to do this weekend? All that stuff gets set aside so that you can give your full attention to the conversation that you're having or the project that you're working on. And then not with the intent that you're just going to stay in that hyper focused mindset for hours upon hours. You have to give yourself a break around it. But, I teach a process that it's known as the NLP mandala, where it's about getting yourself in the right state of mind. And I do it, and I've been doing it for years and years. Takes me about 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds now, because I've been doing it for so long. And I do it all the time. Anytime I'm like, okay, I have to be the best version of myself I can be right now. And what I mean by best version, like sometimes my best, on a scale of 1 to 10, doesn't matter what happened, but like I'm only going to be a 5, like for whatever reason, didn't get enough sleep or something's going on or like whatever, right? Some days when I'm at my best, I might hit a 9. Some days, I'm at a 5. Some days I'm at a 3. But my goal is always to be the best version of myself. So maybe I can't go from a 3 to a 9, but if I can be a 5 and get myself to a 5.5 or a 6, I'm improving, I'm doing better. So I always do something that says, like, it's a reminder, like, be present, be totally in the moment right now, set everything else aside so you can be the best version of yourself. And then when things come at you, which they will, unexpected things,
Oh, yeah.
people will make a comment, the phone will ring, something urgent will get, then you can like handle those things. I always say it's like water off a duck's back. It's like, it's not a big deal and it doesn't have to derail you for the whole day. But there's some mindset piece that does go into that. So for me, it's, my little 10-second ritual about the NLP mandala. And by the way, I do this before I get on phone calls with my mother. In addition to before I get on phone calls with prospective clients, I do it before I get to, get on this call with you. And it's just about like reminding me to be focused and pay attention to the moment that I'm having versus like, well, what about later today? And what about this other thing? And, because that can be overwhelming.
I love that so much because it feels like very recentering and refocusing without putting so much like pressure on yourself too.
Yeah. None of us need more pressure, I don't think. Like, we're like, I got enough pressure. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. I want to transition over to discovery calls, which
Okay.
is kind of like the key to sales, or like it's one of the big factors that will lead to sales if you can have that conversation with
Yeah.
somebody. I think I recently being like within the past couple months on your podcast, you reframed what a discovery call was.
Hmm.
So can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah. So just to give a little bit of background, so I teach a signature framework to a sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. There are 5 steps in the selling staircase, and step 3 is what I refer to as a discovery call. Now, I teach this about discovery calls, and one of the things I didn't realize until I was in a training a couple months back, so you probably heard me record the episode right after this,
Mm.
is that I don't advertise it to a prospective client as a discovery call.
Mhm.
Is this what you're talking about, Rita?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So I advertise it as a work with Nikki discussion because I want there to be clarity right up front with the person who is scheduling a call with me. This is not a pick your brain session.
Mm.
This is not get free coaching from Nikki. This is not a like, we're just going to have a casual conversation. It's like, no, the purpose behind this call is to talk about the intention of us working together. You've already probably made up your mind that
Right.
you're pretty sure you want to work with me. Now let's just figure out what's the right offer for you.
Mhm.
And I've got some due diligence to do in that discovery part of the call, that when we actually get on a live call, that there is some discovering going on, but
Mhm.
it's not it's not a pick your brain session. So I do encourage now my clients to think about, how are you promoting your consultation or your whatever you call it, your sales call, whatever you call it, so that it's clear in the mind of the person who is scheduling that with you. What's the intention? Set the intention right from the bat. And even on mine, when you when you go to schedule, like on the link, it says, have some questions about which is the best way to work with Nikki. let's chat. Like, it's so clear
Love
that this
that.
is not a pick your brain call. This is like, we're going to talk about opportunities. So from a travel agent standpoint, I would think that you would want your call to be something around like, um, planning your trip, or
Mhm.
booking your vacation, or however you want to, but so that it's clear that this is not just like, hey, design 8 vacations, ideal vacations for me, and then
Right.
I'll, take it back to my spouse and we'll talk about it for 3 months and never go anywhere. It's like, no, this is us talking about booking your vacation. This
Right.
is, me putting together your itinerary for the vacation that you are ready to buy.
Right. Right. And I know for me, I I don't know if I would say I'm the victim, but I guess I'm kind of like the victim of stress sweat. And so every time we would have those calls, at the end of the calls, I'd be like, "Ooh, okay." But I feel like every time you do it, it gets easier and the less the stress sweat happens, at least on my side. Um,
I love that, Rita.
when people are having these discovery calls, who's in charge?
Should be you, the seller. Now, there's a couple things that you want to do to set yourself up to be in charge. So this is very NLP language, by the way, that you have to pace the person, the prospect first before you lead. But there
Mhm.
is this idea of pacing and leading. And in a discovery call, you need to lead that conversation, because if you're not leading the conversation, oftentimes what people are doing instead is they're acting like the puppet on the string, and you're trying to dance and impress the prospect. It's like, I'm going to show you how smart I am. I'm going to show you all the context I
Right.
have. I'm going to show you about all the places I've been, blah, blah, blah. And if you feel like you're dancing to like if you're performing during that call, you're not leading the call.
Mhm.
And the way that you lead the call, there's a couple things, so we can go into as much detail as this as you want to. But the first thing that you want to do right off the bat is establish a pre-frame. And a pre-frame, the purpose behind it is to create safety for the person that's in the call with you, so they
Mm.
feel comfortable. It allows for them to be present in the conversation without worried about what's going to happen and
Mhm.
what are they supposed to do and all that stuff. So you got to pre-frame at the beginning what's going to happen, and you then ask permission to lead the
I love
call. So
that.
I'll give you an example of a pre-frame if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I might say to somebody, thank you so much for scheduling this time to chat together. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about you and see if we can put together the ideal vacation for you. We're scheduled to chat for about 20 minutes or whatever. If you're doing more than 30 on that initial call, that might be a problem. So
Mhm.
I don't recommend more than 30 typically. So I would say, we're scheduled to chat for about 20, 25 minutes. Does that still work in your schedule? Pause, wait, let them say yes. Or if it doesn't work, we want to know that too. And then I would say, now, in order to make this time meaningful and productive for you, is it okay if I start with a couple quick questions? That is me saying, I'm about to take the lead, but I'm asking you permission to do it.
I'm like, I'm here. I'm like mind blown because I'm like, the way that you, and this is why I love how you teach, because it's so simple
Yeah.
and it's so non-pressure for both you as the salesperson and as the person receiving and in this conversation. It's like, oh, it feels like very friendly, I
Well,
guess.
it should feel conversational. Now,
Yeah.
just to be really candid, the foundation of everything I teach is built on rapport. I want to have rapport with the person I'm in conversation with. I want you to feel good about the conversation, and I want to leave you feeling good about the conversation, even if you decide not to hire me or I decide that I don't want to plan your vacation. Either way, I just want us to leave on good terms with rapport intact.
Hmm.
And it's really, really hard to earn somebody's business when you don't have rapport with them.
Hmm.
And the way that rapport can easily be established without like, so tell me all about you. Where did you go to school? How many kids do you have? Blah, blah, without doing all of that stuff. Like, and I don't mean to imply that there isn't a friendly component to it, but I'm not I don't think you reached out to me because you were looking for a best friend. You reached
Right.
out to me because you have a need, you have a problem, and I want to show you that I can deliver and I
Mm-hmm.
can build rapport while doing it and still be professional and still lead the conversation. So it should feel conversational. If it doesn't feel conversational, if it feels scripted, if it feels um, pressure, most people that are in the position of being the seller will shy away from it. They'll
Mm-hmm.
look for outs. They'll use a lot of disclaimers, and they'll essentially shoot holes in their credibility throughout the whole conversation because they're like, I don't want people to judge me. I don't want to be seen as salesy
Right.
and gross and weird. So I'm going to
Right.
be weird and salesy and gross in the other way. And so it's not like you're doing it intentionally, but when you can make sales conversational, it gets easier for you and it gets easier for the prospect. And I often say one of the misconceptions about sales is that people think that sales is something that you do to another person. But just think about that language. Who wants something done to them? It
Right.
feels a little aggressive
Mm-hmm.
and weird. And so I teach that sales is actually something you do with somebody. It's a collaboration. So collaborations come through conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the selling should feel conversational.
I love that. I love, love, love that. And that's kind of like how I've tried to evolve the discovery calls that I've had.
Good.
Now, I feel like the one of the most important parts of the discovery call too is to make sure if you want to work with them, to make sure that you're asking for the sale.
Amen. Yes, for sure. Most people, so I mentioned I teach this 5-step process to a sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. Step 5 is the close. Most people inadvertently never close on the call because either they don't know what to say, they're not quite sure how. And when you don't close on the call, it is almost impossible to earn somebody's business because most people won't come up to you or call you or get on a conversation with you and be like, please take my money. Please take my money. Right. So you have to make it easy for them. And so the close has to come at, like, you have to actually say the words out of your mouth
Mm-hmm.
to close. But again, I mentioned that I teach it as a staircase because the objective is to go one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't to go from first introduction to closing. We've all been on the receiving end of somebody showing up in your inbox being like, Rita, you should totally hire me because I looked at your stuff and you need to change this and
Oh my
and you're like,
gosh.
who are you? Gross.
Right.
Delete.
Right.
Right.
All the
So you got
time.
to walk through the steps. But once you've gotten to that place where you're, step 4 is proposal, you've laid out a option or you talked about working together, you have to follow it up with a close. And if you're not following it up with a close, here's actually a way that is that you think somebody's going to come back and work with you and then they ghost you. Chances are you never closed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like just so many gems in here. And I like to tell fellow travel advisors, part of that is discussing like kind of what your process is and
Mhm.
where things are going to go from here. So it kind of lines up for some sort of response at the end so that you do know what the answer is before you get off the call.
That's right. That's right. And
Yeah.
realistically, if we haven't closed on the call, then you should be scheduling a next step conversation.
Mm,
Because if you're not scheduling that next step, chances are you may never hear from that person again. Now, I guess I should say your job is to offer the next step, to attempt to get a next step scheduled. If the person does the like, don't call me, I'll call you kind of thing, in my mind, I will respect that. And
mm,
I kind of look at that as a bless and release. If they come back to me, great. If they don't, fine. I don't believe in chasing clients, but I
mm,
do believe in making it easy for people to pay me money. And the
yeah.
easiest way to make it is to always have that next step scheduled. So if somebody's like, great, this was a really great conversation with you, Rita, I need to talk to my spouse and we're going to talk about like dates and blah, blah, blah. Then I would say in that moment, well, when do you think you'll have that conversation? And let's
Mm,
schedule a circle back call now. That way I can answer any questions that come up from the conversation that you're going to have with your spouse. And we can talk about next steps as far as booking your vacation. And then I want to get a time scheduled, not just on my calendar, but on theirs too, of when that conversation is happening. Because saying to somebody like, well, I'll call you next week and we can, check in and see how it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you call next week, do you get them on the phone? No, because nobody answers their phone anymore unless they have planning to talk to you, because you're going to call them during a time when they're doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a time scheduled where you both agree, we're going to do a quick follow-up, Thursday at 4, then when you call Thursday at 4, they answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love some of the language that you use for this.
Thank you.
I've been hearing recently a lot of would you benefit from, and I'm like, yes, I would benefit from. So what are some of those like maybe key phrases or keywords if people don't know, or they're like, I know I need to ask for the sale, but I don't know how to say it. I feel like
Mhm.
would you benefit from an expert planning your vacation is a
Or
helpful
should
one.
should we go ahead and get started on the planning of your vacation? And
Mm.
then you wait. Now, here's the thing is once you've asked a closed question, so would you benefit from, an expert planning your vacation, or should we go ahead and get the first step scheduled for your vacation?
Mm-hmm.
Either of those questions. The most important thing that you have to do next is zip it. Stop talking.
Love that.
You got to wait and let them respond, because most people get nervous at this
Mm-hmm.
point. Like they start to feel a little nervous. And sometimes when we get nervous, we word vomit. And when we word vomit, we're doing what's called selling past the close. And it's a huge mistake. So when you've asked a question, put your lips together, press, wait, let them respond, because they might say yes. And then we're off to the races. We've got a new client. Or they might say, well, this or that. And if you don't get the, well, this or that, that might be the question that you need to answer, or the objection that you need to overcome in order to earn their business. But you have to let them say it. You have to let them
Mm-hmm.
voice it.
Nikki, I am so grateful for your time here today. So many gems, and seriously, if you are not following Nikki on social media or listening to your Sales Maven podcast, please go and do so. I do know that you have a special treat for everybody that's tuning in. So can you tell us more about that?
Yes, thank you so much. I love to give a gift when I get to go and be in front of somebody's audience. So I have a mini training that walks through each of those 5 steps of the sales conversation. It's called Mastering the Sales Conversation. It's quick, it's short, but it's packed full of language that you can immediately use in your conversations. And you can get it by going to yoursalesmaven.com/wave.
Love it. As we are riding the wave, anything else people should know about having these types of sales conversations and discovery calls before we jump off?
Remember that if somebody is taking the time to talk with you, they've indicated already that there's an interest there. And now it's just your job to ask the right questions that lead them down that path to hiring you. And then can I give one more little
Yes,
thing?
yes.
One of the things that people get nervous about by sales is they're like, what if I don't know what to do or say? And here's my secret weapon for you. If you don't know what to do or say in any time in a conversation, just ask a question and then wait and see what they say. Because oftentimes their answer will give you that next step of what you should do or say next.
Love that. So I just love everything about this, because like I had mentioned to you, and I know many of the people watching, there's not this amazing like quality sales education. So please, like, if anything, Nikki has a couple of programs, and again, the podcast and social media, check those out. If you feel you are not closing on discovery calls, if you are trying to increase your sales, especially for wave season of 2024, because I do genuinely feel that you would benefit from being in Nikki's world and getting a bit of sales training to really get you achieving the goals that you want on that little thermometer temperature gauge that we
That's
have.
right. That's right. That's right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Nikki. And thank you, listeners and watchers of Prep for Wave Week. We'll see you in the other presentations for today. Have a great one. Bye.